It's time for CBJ in 30, presented by Telhio Credit Union. Find us on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play Music, YouTube, and TuneIn. The easiest thing to do is tell Alexa or Siri to play CBJ in 30. Here's your host, Bob McElligott.
Well, it is good to be back with you here on CBJ in 30, presented by Telhio Credit Union for another Monday Mailbag edition of the show, a day when I will answer all of your questions. And oh, by the way, they're much different from the questions I was getting the last time that I did this show, which had me a little bit concerned, quite frankly. I was a little bit concerned as to whether or not taking off time for Christmas and New Year's was enough. Because when last we met on this show, the Blue Jackets were struggling. They were faltering. They were underachieving. They were not having the success that any of us thought they should be having. They weren't having the success that they thought that they should be having. And lo and behold, as soon as I stopped doing the show for a couple of weeks, the Blue Jackets catch fire. And they've done it in a way that none of us would have ever expected. First of all, on Saturday afternoon, they lost to the San Jose Sharks in regulation. 3-2 was the final, and it snapped a 12-game point streak for the Blue Jackets, a streak that has gotten them back into the discussion when it comes to a wild card spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It hasn't put them into that spot yet, but it now has them just on the outside looking in, hoping to be able to crack into the playoffs, into the playoff picture, I should say, right now. That's what their hope is, and it is now a realistic hope. So the minute I quit doing this show, the team got good. And maybe I should have continued to not do the show, but I can't do that. I promised you I would be back, so here I am. But did you know, because I'll tell you, I didn't know this, who would have thought that when the show came back that the Blue Jackets regulars in the lineup would have the names of, Jacob Lilia, Nathan Gerby, Eric Robinson is now a regular, doesn't bounce in and out of the lineup. So many people. Ryan McInnes has been in there as a regular, and I don't want to, and I'm kind of trying to think, some things are going to change. Some guys are now healthy. Some guys will be healthy. Some guys performed well initially and now have leveled off or have dipped a little bit, so they might come out of the lineup. So I don't want to get into too many of them specifically, but here's the bottom line. The Blue Jackets' depth has been shown. Kevin Stenlund, that's a guy that has become a regular. The depth in the organization has been shown in a positive way because the Blue Jackets have had so many injuries. And players have come up and have filled in and have performed well. I'm going to make the argument, and you cannot disagree with it. I don't care if you want to, you can't, because you would be wrong, dead wrong. But these players that have come up, they have performed better in many instances than the players that they have replaced. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing on two fronts. Number one, it has the Blue Jackets back in the playoff discussion, as I said earlier. Okay? Number two, it does show the organization that they have what they thought they had. They thought they had depth. They're able to bring guys up here, put them into NHL situations, and watch them perform the way they thought they did. So they're developing right. They're drafting right. They're developing right. But the third one is almost the first one for me. This has now created a sense of competition. If you are on the outside with an injury, looking at this team, watching them play, watching them succeed, watching a guy doing your job and doing it better than you were doing it, you want to get back into the lineup. And when you do, you'd better perform. You better perform like they're performing, because the fact of the matter is we all know that they can perform that way now. And we know how you can perform, and that's how you'd better perform, the way that the guy that is replacing you for the moment is playing. That's how you better be playing when you come back. So it creates that sense of competition. I don't think the Blue Jackets have had that for much of the year, quite frankly. It's just kind of manifested itself. They've got players up here that are playing more as a team. We've heard that a million times, whether it's from John Tortorella or Jarmo Kekalainen. Same thing, playing as a team, just preaching it. They have preached it. They haven't gotten the results until a lot of these young players have come up here to fill in these injury situations. So it has been fun. It's been a lot of fun. It makes my job so much easier, right? It makes you more happy The questions I was getting the last 2 Monday mailbags that we did were these doom and gloom questions. Should we tank? Is it time to tank? And now what are we talking about? Now we're going to talk about trade deadline. People want to know about trade deadline, talking about asking and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to get to your questions here in just a few moments. It's also good to be back in California. Good to get out of town, get on the road after that disappointing Saturday afternoon loss. Get together, do some bonding. This is a 4-game trip. It starts tonight in Los Angeles, tomorrow in Anaheim. Then we'll move on to a Thursday game in San Jose and wrap it up on Saturday in Vegas against the Golden Knights. So it's a 4-game trip. It's going to be 8 very important points for the Blue Jackets. They need the points. They need to continue this run of success that they've had in the last couple of weeks. But it's nice to be out here, just a little change of scenery. I almost left the door open on my room, the sliding door to the outside. I almost left that open so you could hear the waves actually crashing on the sand. But I just thought that would be rubbing it in a little bit too much. So I want you to know how much I care about you, okay? I just want you to know. I want to be clear on that, how much I care. That's why I didn't do it, because I don't want to rub it in. It's tough for me to even talk about it, because that's kind of rubbing it in, and I'm not trying to do that. You know me better than that. I'm not trying to do that. Before I get to your questions, let me tell you about Telhio Credit Union. I haven't done it for a couple of weeks, but that doesn't mean that they are any less important. As a matter of fact, now you've gotten through the holidays, right? You've gotten through it. You survived. You survived your gift buying. You survived your family. You survived your significant other's family. You got through it. Congratulations. Pat on the back to you. You made it. But one thing that you might have done during this holiday season is maybe you spent a little bit too much. Maybe you took a credit card and you put a little bit more on it than you had expected to, and now maybe you're running into a little bit of debt, and you'd like to relieve that and get away from that high-interest credit card, and maybe you could do that through a personal loan. Well, Telhio Credit Union has those personal loans, and they have great rates, and they have rates that you should check out and see if that might be a fit for you to help you to get back to where you want to be and do it at a much less interest rate, a lesser interest rate. So that's worth going and checking out. You can also check out all the other services that Telhio Credit Union offers. All you have to do is go to their website at telhio.org. Everything is listed there so well. It's put together for you to find easily, to click on it, to read. But don't fear. If there's something you can't find, if there's a question that you have, there is a live chat button on the right-hand side of the screen. You can find it during regular business hours. You just click on that. Somebody will pop up on the screen, and they will help you to get the answer to the question that you have. Also, if you're driving around town and you're going past one of those Telhio Credit Union offices, just stop by, because their staff would be happy to talk to you about becoming a member with them. Telhio Credit Union is open to everyone in central and southwestern Ohio. They're federally insured by NCUA. Now, I got this great idea over the last 2 weeks when I had off from doing this show. Because this is a podcast and it's not done live, I don't have the ability to take calls like a regular talk show, because it's done when it's convenient. It's not done at a certain time every day and all that stuff like a regular radio show. And you guys have been great about sending in your questions on Twitter at Bobby Mac Sports, and that's where I'm going to get the bulk of them again today. But I came up with an idea, from listening to satellite radio throughout the holidays. I got this idea, and it is simply to take your phone and use your voice memo feature. If you have an iPhone, I know it's voice memo. I don't know what it is on an Android phone. But just to record a message and email it to me. So if you have a question, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you want to do it, if you're comfortable doing it, and you should be, because it's just like picking up the phone and calling a talk show. But if you're comfortable doing it, just record your question and email it to me at bobbymac@bluejackets.com, BOBBYMAC@bluejackets.com. And when you do that, I can take your question and I can actually make you a part of the show. And I'm going to demonstrate it for you right now, how well it works, how good it sounds, and maybe next time this could be you.
Hey, Bobby Mac. Michael Davis here from Westerville, Ohio. My daughter and I have been trying to figure something out that we hope you can answer for us. How in the heck can the Cleveland Monsters possibly be fielding an ice hockey team right now with all these call-ups? We're really curious where the players come from in the middle of the season like that. They obviously can't take them from juniors. I don't know if they've got a practice squad or something sitting in Cleveland. Looking forward to hearing your answer. And as always, go Jackets!
Michael, thank you for the question. That was great. You see how easy it is? Just get on your phone, go to your voice memos, just ask your question, email it to me, Bobby Mack, BOBBYMAC, @BlueJackets.com. It's that easy, and it sounds so great. So, Michael, now I'm going to answer your question, and it's a very legitimate question. How in the heck can the Cleveland Monsters find players? Where do they get those players? How are they still able to fill their roster? Well, I'll tell you. First of all, they had a couple of players that are under contract with the Blue Jackets under their two-way American Hockey League, ECHL, which used to be the East Coast Hockey League. Now they just call it ECHL, AHL, ECHL contracts. So there were a couple of players that they had positioned within the ECHL. They were playing in Jacksonville, Florida. So those players immediately were brought back to Cleveland when spots were open. They were forwards. I believe they were both forwards. Anyway, immediately when they needed forwards, boom, those two guys come up right now, no questions asked. But that's not enough to cover it. So you're right. Where do they get other players? Well, they get them from other ECHL teams. And I just talked with Chris Clark about this a couple of days ago. He was sitting in his office when I walked by. I stuck my head in and asked him about this very thing because I know how it works. I worked in the ECHL. I worked in the AHL. This is how it works. There are players that are playing in the ECHL, and every coach there is trying to recruit players to play for them during the summer. And one of the things that they use as a recruiting tool is, we will get you an opportunity to play at the AHL level. If something comes up, if a team calls, if they need a player, and if you're performing, we are going to recommend you going and playing in the AHL. So here's what will happen with the teams in the ECHL. They will handicap themselves, and they will give away some of their best players to go play for an AHL team that is in need of bodies, because that's what keeps them going. That's why players will come and sign with them, because they know they're going to get an opportunity to move up to the next level. Case in point, when I was in Johnstown many moons ago, this is the mid-'90s, at that point, we were trading to get players from other teams. They were refusing to report because they didn't want to play there. They would get suspended. They couldn't play in that league. They'd jump to some other league, the Central Hockey League or something like that. They would find another place to play. When I came back there a few years later to be the play-by-play broadcaster, things had changed. There was a new general manager. There was a new head coach. And what they had decided between the two of them is that they were going to be a team that was going to give opportunity to their players. Toby O'Brien was the general manager. Scott Allen, who is he's back in the AHL, but most recently last year he was on the coaching staff of the Arizona Coyotes. Scott was the coach. Those two guys said, look, we're going to try to sign the best players we can, and we're going to promise them we're going to get them an opportunity to move up and play in the American Hockey League. And they did that. And there were times when we would be without 4 or 5 of our best players. You'd go through losing streaks because of it. But what it did was it made players want to sign with you in the summer because they knew they might get that chance with you, and they might not get it with somebody else, because other coaches that want to hold on, that want to win, they weren't worried about you as much as they were worried about them. So the same is going on right now. Chris Clark has developed relationships with coaches in the ECHL, and when he needs players, he's calling and he's getting those players. And one of the teams that he did get players from, 1 or 2, I forget if it's 1 or 2, I know he got at least 1, from the Toledo Walleye. And the coach there is Dan Watson. And Dan Watson, many moons ago when the Blue Jackets first started, he was a defenseman who played in Syracuse. So it's kind of the everything comes full circle type of a thing, right? So Dan Watson's the head coach there. Chris Clark calls him, says, hey, I really need a player or two. And he goes, hey, I got the guys for you. Take this guy, and if you need another guy, take this guy. So that's where they get them. That's how they get them. That's where they get them. And for some guys, it turns into a fantastic opportunity. For some guys, they get a chance to play in the American League, and maybe it leads to them one day playing in the National Hockey League. So that's the story. So I hope that answered your question. Thanks for being the first to actually ask your question on the show. And I hope that many other people will now follow suit and do that in the weeks to come. Aaron Wools has this question. Aaron says, well, first he goes, missed you during the break, so thank you for that. And then the question, sounds like Liam Foudy had a great junior tournament. Can you break down in layman's terms the agreement the NHL has with the Canadian Hockey League, which is the Ontario Hockey League, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and the Western Hockey League? Those three comprise that entity that is the CHL. What is the agreement that they have with the NHL, and what is the soonest we could see Foudy in Cleveland or Columbus? All right, here's the deal. When a player signs to play with a junior team, he cannot play in the American Hockey League or the ECHL until he is 20 years old. Can't play in the minors until he's 20 years old. However, and he could go back to junior as an overage. That's possible, but hardly ever happens. But if you are good enough at 18, when you get drafted, you can come right into the National Hockey League. So it's kind of a crazy thing. It's kind of, I understand it. You know, look, the NHL is getting free development, if you will, with the players playing junior hockey. You don't have complete control. That's one thing. Unlike baseball, when you draft a guy, you put him in the minor leagues. He's playing for your team. You're paying him. You control how he develops. Okay? So that's what you give up. And so Liam Foudy, let me get to Liam Foudy. So when could you see Liam Foudy? Well, after he is, he either comes here, or if he gets to be 20 years old and he's not ready to be here yet, then he can go to Cleveland and play. Also, there's that agreement where once your team gets knocked out of the playoffs in junior hockey, then you can join your NHL affiliate. So you could go to Cleveland and play in that case, in that type of a situation too. So, but normally it is, if you're good enough to play at 18, boom, you come right into the NHL. Otherwise, you could come in at 19, right from junior, but you can't go to the AHL. So if you're not ready to play in the NHL, it's at least until you're 20 years old, and then you can go into the minor league system. David Lytle says, once our regulars start coming back, who among the many replacements do you see sticking with the team? I'm really impressed with the energy level these guys have brought to the team. No highs and lows until the San Jose game this past Saturday. Well, I totally agree with that, David. There's no question. And the guy that jumps off the page at me is Nathan Gerbe. I mean, how could you even consider sending this guy out? And he's an older guy, and I think the Blue Jackets need that. A guy that has had a fight and claw. He played in the NHL. He left and he went to Europe. That's usually the kiss of death. Guys don't return from Europe and play again in the AHL or the NHL. He has done that. He's been a great leader when he's been in Cleveland, and now he is leading by example because, well, a lot of those guys that he was playing with and trying to set the example for are now here and playing with him. However, the guys that are still down there, they see what he's doing, and they see that the hard work pays off. So it's great for him. It's great for the organization. So that guy is number one to me. Once you get beyond that, I like what Lilia has done. He's got some real chemistry going there with Riley Nash. With Bemstrom back, I'm interested to see how much longer Ryan McInnes stays in the lineup because I thought he was good early on, and I think he's kind of leveled out, maybe had a couple of peaks here as of late. Cam Atkinson's getting very close to a return. He's on this trip, so he could return. Heck, he could return tonight. Maybe there's a 50-50 chance he comes in tonight. Maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe it's not until later in the trip. But once he comes back, you have to make some decisions. But to me, Nathan Gerbe is head and shoulders above the other guys, and he's just more experienced. He's more mature. He just brings something. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to go back. Please don't get me wrong. I am not the general manager of this team. So whatever Yarmo deems to be right is what will be done. Jason Messick wants to kind of follow up with that. He says, seems like Nathan Gerbe is a guy that you'd want to lock up within the organization to help mentor the younger players and possibly even coach down the road. Maybe, and that's going to be down the road for him. He can obviously still play, and he can play in both leagues, AHL, NHL. He is a valuable commodity. The Blue Jackets did wrap him up with a deal for a couple of years. And without looking, I don't know if this is the second year of it or just the first of a 2-year deal. But anyway, they did get him for a couple of years for that reason, to be a guy that could come up and play and to be a mentor. So they did really good work with that. I think Jarmo Kekalainen and Bill Zito should be they should not miss out on congratulations for seeing that one and getting him in the fold, because he's been really important for them. He was really important for them before you and I knew it, because the guys that came up here to play were ready to play, and that had a lot to do with him and his leadership in Cleveland. And now he's up here doing the job himself. Next question. Mike the Fireman says, with an 80-game regular season, is it impossible to give 100% effort every shift? Do teams plan on coasting a little this time of the year? And would the game against the Sharks on Saturday be an example? Look, the Blue Jackets weren't trying to coast, and I don't think any team is planning on coasting. But, yeah, there are days where you just don't have it. And I thought the Blue Jackets were in that spot the other day. This is not an excuse. This is a fact. They don't play very many of the afternoon games. I think teams like the Flyers and the Penguins and the Rangers and the Bruins and the Blackhawks, they are used to playing those early games. They do it a lot. And the Blue Jackets, it was a one-off. They had been in Boston. They had to fly home. Now all of a sudden they've got this afternoon game. They're leaving immediately after the game to come out here to California. A lot of distraction, different time. And they had been hot for a couple of weeks, so I think they were due to have a letdown. And they did. But at least they came back and battled in the final 3 minutes after they got down by 2. They scored 25 seconds later, and they were back in it, and they had a chance at the end. I think that was really important, the way they finished that game. Even though they didn't win it, the way they finished it, I think is very encouraging. Linda says, I was at the Kids Takeover Day on Saturday. It was a lot of fun. Do other cities do things like that for kids? Well, Linda, it's look, the way sports works is if somebody does something and it's a success, other teams start to look at how they could do it. And the Blue Jackets aren't the only team that have done a Kids Day. The Toronto Maple Leafs did a Kids Day. But, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And Susie Q 4160 wants to know what my favorite part about it was. I don't know if I have a specific part. Well, maybe the national anthem. I did enjoy the national anthem. The 11-year-old young man, Mason, who did the national anthem, I thought he did a fantastic job. That cannot be easy in front of 18,000 people to go out there and pull that off the way he did. So I really enjoyed that. But I think it was just fun all around, and that's what it was meant to be. It was meant to be fun, and again, other teams do it, but ideas are shared in this industry. Nobody's directly competing against each other here. You know, it's not like you're two different brands of cars, and you can't tell that guy down the street something because he might use it and do it better than you. And look, it's all shared, and good ideas are good ideas, and that was certainly one of them. But yes, Linda, other teams in the league have been doing it, doing that as well. Aiden Montgomery says 2 things. 1, I was at the Gahanna game, and your son is a beast in net. He had a shutout, and so that's the first part. So, well, thank you, Aiden. I appreciate that. My son Matthew will appreciate that. He finally got back to action, just like me doing the show again. They had a long break for Christmas, and then went back into action over the weekend and had a couple of nice wins. So thank you, Aiden. I appreciate that. But now here's Aiden's question. What would you think if the Blue Jackets traded for Jimmy Howard with the rumors that are floating around? Look, rumors are floating around, and the Blue Jackets are in a spot where Korpisalo's out 4 to 6 weeks. Hey, Elvis, tip the cap to him. He's come in, and he's done a nice job, picked up a couple of wins, and he had 0 of those before Korpisalo got hurt. So good on Elvis, doing a nice piece of work there. And but could they use a veteran backup? Sure. And it all depends. What are you looking to do here? You're looking to get into the playoffs? Maybe there needs to be a little bit more at that position, but we talked about this before, and nothing has changed. There are still other teams that are looking for the same thing, and it's going to depend upon what that team wants and what you have and what you're willing to give up and all that stuff. And then here's the other thing. If you were to trade for him now, okay, and you get through this and you've got your points and it all sounds great, then Korpisalo comes back, who, oh, by the way, is an all-star goaltender, named to the NHL All-Star game. So now you're going to bring back an all-star. Then where does Elvis fall in the pecking list? Now you've got 3 goalies, and nobody's practicing with 3 goalies for the final 2.5 months of the season. It's ridiculous. So you got to keep that in mind as well. What is the effect down the road? And then what are you going to do with all these guys? And Detroit's a fine example. They had a goalie that they traded to get from Arizona, the Comrie kid. They traded to get him. And then when Jimmy Howard came back, they put him on waivers. They were trying to get him to Grand Rapids in the American League. And the Winnipeg Jets, who had him initially, saw that he was on waivers, and they took him back. So, you get into those kind of situations, too, where you can have too many bodies. Right now, for the moment, and maybe by, what time does this game start? 10:30 tonight, your time. So maybe by 1:30, 2 o'clock this morning, maybe I have a different answer. But right now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, okay? Now, Matisse Kivlenieks, is he going to play up here? Who knows? He's the backup right now. Who knows? But Elvis was brought here to do this, and he's done fine. He's done fine in the 3 games he's played since Korpisalo has gotten hurt. On that subject, Jason, Elvis isn't speaking to the media, which you do not consider yourself to be, so could you get us a conversation with him? Jason, with all due respect, no, I can't, and I won't, and I don't want to. And I'll tell you why I don't want to. It's not because I don't like him, I don't care what he has to say, blah, blah, blah. Again, he was talking to everybody and their brother and not winning games. Now he stopped talking and he's winning games. Why do I want to go change that? I want to have nothing to do with changing that. So let him be quiet and do his job. Let him be quiet and do his job. That's what he's been doing right there. Next thing. Jonathan Zygmunt. If you were Yarmo, what would you do at the trade deadline? What do you think is best for the team? First of all, Jonathan, and I don't want to be a wet blanket on your fire. I really don't. But let's be honest. 2.5 weeks ago, I was getting questions about tanking. That's where it was. Okay, now it's somewhere different. My point is, who knows what it's going to be by the trade deadline? If you're in it and you have a chance, then you bolster, right? Then you bolster and you try to get better. It's not going to be what last year was. That was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, selling out and getting all those guys and trying it. That's not going to happen. But if you're in a spot, you'll try to bolster, you'll try to get better. And if you're not, if it goes back to where it was before, then you're going to unload some pieces, and then you unload pieces with information about the guys that came up and played during this streak and where they are with their development. You're going to have a lot more information. That's what's going to be so valuable out of all this for the management, is how much information they are going to have on these guys, because they got to see them play for a couple of weeks. In my opinion, that's going to pay dividends down the road. The Andersons Artillery says Hockey Night in Canada was talking about Calgary having a need for right wings when healthy, or having a need for right wings, when healthy. The Blue Jackets are pretty deep at right wing. Possible trade partner at the deadline? The Flames have a wealth of centers. Yeah, again, it sounds great, and it looks like it matches up, and what are the prices going to be? What are the needs going to be when you get there? I mean, the deadline is still weeks and weeks away, right? Again, I'm not trying to squash the happy talk of trades now and not the doom and gloom from a couple of weeks ago. But I just want you to be realistic. I just want you to remember how quickly things change. I mean, just where this team is right now is all the reminder you need of how quickly things change. So just take a breath. You're going to get players back. This is going to be like a trade deadline coming up here over the next couple of days. Look, Bemstrom came back the other day. He's now active. Nudavara was activated yesterday, so he's now available. I told you Atkinson is close. And when you add Cam Atkinson, you are going to add, I don't care what he's done to this point, okay? Because Cam is a pro. He has to be sitting and watching what's going on and saying, oh, God, I got to get back in there. But when he does, he's got to play the way this team is playing now, not like he was playing before and like they were playing before. That didn't work. But you're going to add a guy who had 41 goals last year. Now, if I were to say to you, let's just say it's this point of the season, and your team's doing okay, And if I were to say to you, hey, I've got a 41-goal scorer from a year ago who I can get you and you can have him on your team, would you take him? Yes, you'd take him. That's going to be like a trade deadline in itself as long as he plays the way he has to play, the way the team is playing right now. That's early trade deadline right there. Ryan Murray comes back, early trade deadline. When Josh Anderson comes back, early trade deadline. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, sure. Could you get a centerman from some? Yeah, great. Great if it works. Great if it happens. Great if you can find a match. But what I'm telling you is you're going to be getting guys over the next couple of weeks. And they are proven guys who weren't playing like proven guys. But now they all know that there are others that can do their job and will do their job and will potentially do it better. Now, if that doesn't get you going, then you need to get going because it's all set. It's all set. They've watched this. Sonny Milano the other day. John Tortorella announces that he's going to play against, against Boston. And I thought about asking him in the morning, are you concerned at all? We've talked about Sonny in defense for years. Offense, no problem. Defense, could be a problem. He's gotten better at it. But I was going to ask him, are you concerned because your team is built on defense right now and that's not Sonny's MO? And I didn't ask him. But after the game, it got answered because Tortorella said that on Sonny's first shift, he wasn't impressed. He was everywhere. And he said he went to him in between periods and he reminded him and said, have you been watching the way this team has been playing while you were out? Have you watched it? That's the way you've got to play. And he got better. And he's been fine. I think he's been really fine, actually. So that message is out there. It's going to be up to those guys to take it and process it the right way. But I think they will. I really do. I think they will. Because all the other guys that have been playing, they're locked in. They're locked in. They're not going to change. We saw it last year in the playoffs. They're playing the same way right now. They're not going to change, in my opinion. That's what I believe. It's not what I think. It's what I believe. And it is all about a belief, right? I hope. Well, tonight, Blue Jackets and the Los Angeles Kings. Blue Jackets going for a season sweep of the Kings. Remember, they beat them in overtime a couple of weeks ago at Nationwide Arena. It's a late start. Take a nap. Get ready to stay up late. Puck drops at 10:30 tonight. Our pregame coverage will start at 10 o'clock on the Blue Jackets radio network. And that includes the flagship station 97.1 The Fan in Columbus. Also, you can get the game at bluejackets.com and through the Blue Jackets app. So, again, thank you for your questions. Thank you for the actual voiced question. If you want to do that next week, you can. Again, you just use your voice memo on your phone, record your question, email it to me. Bobby Mack, BOBBYMAC, at bluejackets.com. Otherwise, you can always go to Bobby Mack Sports on Twitter, and you can send me your questions anytime you would like. But thank you again. You've made it another successful Monday Mailbag edition of CBJ in 30, presented by Telhio Credit Union. Until tonight, I'm Bob McElligott saying so long.